At dinner, my daughter Emma said loudly, "You're a loser, Mom, but Dad's new wife Sarah isn't." I didn't say anything, but my heart broke into pieces. A week later, Emma was without a car, money, and a roof over her head. That same evening, my ex-husband called me crying, and he said something that changed everything. Before we continue, please like this video and tell us in the comments what you think about this story. We might give you a shout out in our next video, so keep watching. Today's special shout out goes to Elaine Lewis from Manchester, United Kingdom. The kitchen in our small apartment smelled like chicken soup, the kind I made every Sunday for my family. The warm smell filled our tiny dining room, mixing with the fresh flowers I bought from the corner store. It was a quiet Sunday in Chicago, where the wind always whistled through our old windows. Emma, my 26-year-old daughter, sat across from me at our wooden table, pushing her food around with her spoon like she was angry. My son Marcus, who's 24, sat next to me, trying to keep everyone happy like he always does. We were talking about simple things like work, the weather, and the new plants growing on our balcony. Then Emma suddenly threw her spoon down, making a loud crash that echoed in our quiet room. "You're a loser, Mom," she said loudly, her voice cutting through the air like a sharp knife. "But Dad's new wife Sarah isn't a loser. She's got everything figured out. Big job, fancy clothes, expensive stuff. I think I'll start calling her Mom from now on." The words hit me like someone had punched me in the stomach. My hands started shaking as I held my water glass. But I didn't say anything. "Not yet," Marcus gasped, his eyes getting big with shock. The family picture on our wall caught my eye. A happy photo from 5 years ago when we were all together at the park. Before the divorce broke our family apart. How could she say that after everything I did for her? "Emma, that's not nice," Marcus said back, his voice calm but hurt. He leaned forward in his chair. "Mom has been there for us our whole lives. She built this family, not some stranger." "You're being mean." Emma laughed in a nasty way, pushing her bowl so hard it almost fell off the table. "Mean? Look at her, Marcus. Still working 2 jobs just to pay rent. Sarah is a real success story. She knows how to win in life. Mom is just ordinary." She stood up fast, her chair making a loud scraping sound on our old floor. I sat there, too shocked to speak, thinking about something that happened years ago. Right after the divorce, when Robert left me for what he called a better woman. Emma was 21 then, just finished college and didn't know what to do with her life. I had saved up all my money and bought her a small red car. Nothing fancy, but it worked well. "This is for you, sweetie," I said, feeling so proud and happy. But she just looked at it and said, "Thanks, I guess. But Sarah drives a BMW." That hurt so much, but I buried the pain and kept working extra hours to help pay for her apartment and food. "Emma, sit down," I finally said, my voice quiet but firm, even though my jaw was so tight it hurt. "We're a family. Families don't talk like that." She laughed again, that same mean laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Family? Really? You've been holding me back, Mom. Sarah is the one who really gets it. She gives real advice, real help. And just old-fashioned." With that, she grabbed her jacket and walked to the door, her feet stomping loudly on our wooden floor. Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. "Don't listen to her, Mom. She's wrong. You're the best mother in the world. She's just, I don't know, maybe jealous or something." His words made me feel a little better, but the hurt was still fresh. He stood up too and gave me a big hug. "I'll talk to her later. Love you, Mom." Then he followed Emma out, the front door closing with a soft click, leaving our home very quiet. I stayed in my chair, looking at the messy table with half-eaten food and crumpled napkins. The chicken soup was getting cold. My mind was spinning, trying to understand how things got so bad. How did it come to this? Emma lived for free in the apartment I rented for her, driving the car I bought, while she spent all her time with Sarah, that fancy 45-year-old businesswoman who married my ex-husband. Sarah with her expensive suits and fake smile, always telling Robert how she could make his family better. But me. I had been working 2 jobs in Chicago's cold winters, cleaning offices at night and working at a store during the day, not just to pay bills but to build a future for my children. The photo on the wall seemed to mock me now, showing us when we were happy. The clock on the wall ticked softly, each second making the quietness feel bigger. I didn't clean up the dishes or even stand up. Instead, I let my anger grow, thinking about it like a fire getting bigger. I thought about every late night I worked, every vacation I didn't take so I could pay Emma's bills, every time she threw Sarah's name in my face like a weapon. Enough was enough. If Emma wanted to call me a loser, she would learn what life looked like without my help. It was time to show her what I was really worth. The night air outside was cool, with a smell of spring flowers from our neighbor's garden floating through the open window. I left the table messy, with the lights still on in our dining room, making everything look warm and yellow. I got a cold soda from the fridge and went outside to our small balcony. The fizzy drink felt good in my hands as I looked up at the stars above Chicago. They were shining like tiny diamonds in the dark sky. I opened the can with a satisfying pop and took a long drink, letting the coldness match the cold feeling growing inside me. Walking around our small balcony, stepping on some wet leaves from an earlier rain, I couldn't stop thinking about Emma's words. They kept playing in my head over and over, making the fire inside me burn bigger. Sitting on the old chair I bought at a yard sale years ago, I looked up at those stars and started remembering things. Felt like they were pulling memories out of me one by one. I remembered the day I rented Emma that apartment, 3 years after the divorce. She was 23, jumping from job to job, always making excuses. "Mom, I need a stable place to get my life together," she said over the phone, her voice sounding sad and desperate. So I did what any mother would do. I used all my savings to pay for a nice one-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood not far from where we lived. The rent was in my name, of course. Her credit was terrible. "This is your chance, honey," I told her as we stood in the empty living room that still smelled like fresh paint. She smiled and hugged me, but within a few months, I was the only one paying rent. "Just this once, Mom," became "just until I find something better." And Sarah had been there in the background even then, taking Robert on expensive trips while I paid for our children's lives. Another sip of soda, the bubbles tickling my throat as anger rose up inside me. I remembered last Christmas when Emma opened the envelope I gave her with money inside for her car repairs. "Thanks, but Sarah's talking about helping me invest my money," she said without really looking at me, folding the check and putting it away. Sarah's ideas. Always Sarah's this, Sarah's that. That woman had charmed her way into my family, making herself look like the hero while I was the foundation holding everything up. But tonight, under these stars, something became very clear. I wasn't going to let this continue. Being fair had been my way of life all these years. Working those 2 jobs, my hands getting dry from cleaning chemicals, all to give my children what I never had. Emma's greed, her lack of respect for everything I did. It was time she learned what life felt like without my help. I crushed the empty can in my hand, the metal making a sharp crunch sound, and set it on the railing. The first light of morning was starting to show in the east, turning the sky from black to soft gray. My eyes became hard as I watched the sun come up, and I felt determined, like the morning dew settling on everything. As the first rays of sunlight came over the horizon, I got up early, my body filled with the strong decision I had made during the night. The stars in the sky had faded, but their clarity stayed in my mind like a map showing me what to do next. I didn't eat breakfast, just grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. I got into my old car, and the engine started with a familiar sound, cutting through the quiet Chicago morning. Water drops clung to the windows of parked cars along the street as I drove toward Emma's neighborhood, the one I had chosen for its safety years ago. The air was fresh and smelled like wet grass, but I was focused. No second thoughts, just action. I parked at the curb outside her apartment building and saw the red car I bought her sitting in the parking spot, still shiny from the last wash I paid for. The building looked nice but not well taken care of, with curtains closed against the morning light. I got out of my car and walked up to her door, my shoes making soft sounds on the concrete path. I knocked firmly on the door 3 times, the sound showing how determined I was. Inside I heard movement, then the lock turning. Emma opened the door with messy hair and sleepy eyes from what must have been a late night. She was wearing wrinkled pajamas, very different from the confident person who had said mean things at dinner. "Mom, what are you doing here so early?" she mumbled, rubbing her face, looking surprised and annoyed. "I'm here for the car keys, Emma. Give them to me," I said firmly, standing straight on her doorstep. She blinked, then laughed, a forced laugh that sounded like sandpaper. "What? No, that's my car. You gave it to me." "Gave it to you," I repeated, my voice steady, though I remembered the day I surprised her with it. I had driven to her old apartment with a new car, a big red bow on top like in commercials. She was 21, with no job after dropping out of community college. "This will help you get started, sweetie," I had said, feeling so happy and proud. But she had just shrugged and said, "It's okay, I guess. Sarah says she might help me get something better someday." That casual dismissal had hurt so much, but I had pushed the pain away and kept paying for insurance every month since then. Now, under the morning sun, that memory made me even more determined. "It's registered in my name," I continued, pulling out the folded registration from my purse. "I've paid every bill, every repair. It's mine, and I'm taking it back." Emma's face got hard, and she gripped the doorframe tighter. "You can't just show up and take it. That's stealing." I stepped closer, looking right into her eyes. "No, honey. Keeping it without permission, that's stealing. Give me the keys or I'll call the police right now and let them figure it out." She hesitated, her eyes looking back and forth between me and the car. A neighbor across the street stopped watering her plants and looked over at us curiously. The tension grew while birds sang in the trees, making a strange contrast to our argument. Finally, Emma cursed under her breath and went inside, coming back with the keys hanging from her finger. She pushed them at me, her hands shaking a little. "Fine, take it. But this is low, Mom. Really low. Sarah's right about you. You're just bitter and jealous." I took the keys without saying anything, feeling their weight in my hand like a small victory. I got into the driver's seat, and the car started smoothly thanks to the tune-up I had paid for last month. Emma stood on her doorstep, angry, with her arms crossed as I backed out of the parking space. In my rearview mirror, she got smaller and smaller, but the angry look in her eyes stayed with me. Driving away through the streets of Chicago, past the budding trees and quiet homes, I felt a rush of power and strength. The clock on the dashboard showed the time moving forward, and my thoughts moved to the next step. Downtown wasn't far, and the bank would open soon. This was just the beginning. The drive to downtown Chicago took me along roads I knew well, Lake Michigan sparkling to my right under the rising sun. I parked the red car in the bank's parking lot and got my folder of important papers from the glove compartment. Bank statements, rental agreements, all organized perfectly. Walking through the glass doors that opened with a soft whoosh sound, I could see the clear spring sky reflected in them. Inside, the lobby was quiet, with tile floors that echoed my footsteps as I walked to the counter. A young man in a neat shirt looked up from his computer screen that was flickering with the bank's logo. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you today?" he asked in a professional and polite voice. I put my ID and the rental papers on the counter, spreading them out carefully. "I need to stop the automatic payments on this account. It's for an apartment I own, but the living situation has changed." He nodded and started typing on his keyboard, the clicking sound steady and rhythmic. As he looked at the details, my mind wandered to the day I had signed those papers. Emma had been there, sitting in the rental office, looking at her phone while I signed page after page. "Thanks, Mom. This place is perfect," she had said without even looking up. I had paid the security deposit from my overtime money, still smelling like cleaning chemicals from my night job. Robert had been gone by then, off with Sarah, but I wanted to give Emma a stable home. Now, as the bank worker asked for confirmation, that memory made me sure I was doing the right thing. "Everything looks correct," he said after a moment, printing out a form. "You'll need to sign here to stop the transfers. We'll let the resident know by mail, but it might take a few days." I signed with a steady hand, the pen moving smoothly across the paper. That's fine. Thank you. As I gathered my papers, my phone started buzzing in my pocket, vibrating insistently and breaking the calm quiet of the lobby. I stepped aside to a quiet corner near a plant with shiny green leaves and answered the call. It was Emma, her voice exploding through the phone before I could even say hello. Mom, what the hell? The bank just called and said payments are stopping. You're kicking me out. This is MY apartment. I kept my voice calm, holding the phone tighter as the plastic warmed against my ear. It's my apartment, Emma. My name on the lease. My money keeping it going. You were never officially a tenant. Just a guest I let stay while I paid every bill. Her breathing was heavy and ragged, the anger turning into something desperate and scared. You can't do this. Where am I supposed to go? This is cruel. You're ruining my life over one comment. One comment. I repeated, pausing as someone in the lobby looked over after hearing the loud voice on my phone. It's been years of taking, Emma. Years of me building while you lean on Sarah. Time to stand on your own 2 feet. She was begging now, her words tumbling out fast and panicked. Wait, Mom, let's talk. I didn't mean it. Sarah's been giving advice, but please don't do this. I hung up, the click sounding final, but her desperate voice echoed in my mind. My phone buzzed with a text alert, probably from her again, or maybe someone else she had called for help. As I pushed through the bank doors, the sunlight hit me directly, and I wondered who she would turn to next. Back home, the familiar creak of the front door greeted me as I stepped inside, the bank's paperwork still tucked under my arm like a shield. The drive from downtown had been peaceful, the red car handling smoothly on the winding roads along the lake. But Emma's desperate voice from the phone call stayed in my ears like an unwanted song. I set the keys on the kitchen counter, the metal making a soft clink against the granite surface, and poured myself a cup of coffee from the pot I had set to brew before leaving. Steam rose in lazy swirls, carrying the rich smell that helped me feel calm amid all the chaos. As I sat in my favorite armchair in the living room, sunlight came through the half-open curtains in golden beams. My phone buzzed again with a text notification. It was from Marcus, his message appearing with a soft chime. Mom, Emma just called me freaking out. She says you're cutting her off completely. What's happening? I sipped my coffee, feeling the warmth spread through me, and texted back quickly, keeping it short. Just taking back what's mine. She'll be fine. But before I could put the phone down, it rang with Marcus's name flashing on the screen. I answered, leaning back in my chair. Hey, honey, I said, my voice steady and calm. Mom, talk to me, he replied, his voice full of worry and concern. Emma is going crazy about the car and the apartment. She said she's going to Sarah for help, and that Sarah's already talking about handling you and teaching you a lesson. Are you okay? His words hit me like a cold wave, but I kept my grip relaxed on my coffee mug, letting the information sink in. Sarah, always Sarah, that 45-year-old snake in expensive clothes, working from the shadows like a puppet master. I walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street where children rode their bikes in the spring warmth, their laughter soft and distant. I'm fine, Marcus. Emma is just upset and lashing out. Tell me more about what she said about Sarah. He paused, and I could hear his breathing over the phone. She mentioned Sarah offering to pay the rent temporarily, but only if Emma cuts you out of her life completely. And Sarah laughed about it, said you've been a pushover for too long. Emma is buying into it, Mom. She's angry but desperate. I nodded to myself, the pieces clicking together like a puzzle. Of course Emma would run to her, the woman who had slithered into our lives right after the divorce. My mind flashed back to a memory as I stared at a faded photo on the fireplace mantel, one of all 4 of us at a summer picnic before everything fell apart. It was a year after Robert left me for Sarah. She had shown up at Emma's birthday dinner without being invited, bringing expensive gifts that made my homemade cake look cheap and simple. Your mom's great at cleaning houses, Sarah had said with a fake smile and a wink, but I'm here to clean up futures. Emma had been so impressed while I swallowed the insult and worked extra hours the next month to pay for her textbooks. That pattern of my hard work being dismissed while Sarah's flashy gestures were praised had repeated over and over again. "Marcus, thanks for telling me," I said, my voice getting stronger and more determined. "Sarah's playing games, but I'm not backing down. This is about respect and fairness." "I know, Mom. Just be careful." Emma sounded really serious about getting Sarah involved. We talked a bit more, his support giving me comfort and strength before we hung up. I scrolled through old text messages from Emma, looking at the timestamps that showed months and months of requests for money. Not one mention of gratitude or thanks. The betrayal cut deeper, but so did my determination and resolve. Walking around the room now, the floorboards creaking under my feet, I checked a few emails on my laptop. I could see patterns of Sarah's influence everywhere. Subtle insults and put-downs in family group chats that I had been left out of. A car door slammed somewhere in the neighborhood, reminding me of all the missed opportunities in the past when I should have stood up for myself. The alliances were forming against me faster than I had expected. And as I set the phone down, my thoughts turned to strengthening my position, with strategies and plans bubbling up in my mind like water coming to a boil. The phone started vibrating again almost immediately. I looked at the screen and saw Robert's name, my ex-husband, flashing urgently. The living room suddenly felt smaller, and the steam from my cooling coffee disappeared into the air like fading dreams. I answered while standing by the window where the neighborhood's calm peace mocked the storm brewing inside me. "Linda, what on earth are you doing?" Robert's voice burst through the phone, frantic and accusatory, each word higher and more panicked than the last. "Emma is hysterical. She says you took her car and stopped paying for her apartment. Have you lost your mind?" I took a deep breath, gripping the windowsill with my free hand, feeling the smooth wood under my fingers. "Hello to you too, Robert. I haven't lost anything. I took back what's legally mine. The car I bought and the apartment I've been paying for. Emma has had plenty of time to grow up and be responsible." He sputtered, the phone crackling with his emotion and anger. "But she's your daughter. You can't just throw her out like this. Sarah and I are worried sick. She's talking about getting lawyers involved if you don't fix this mess." Sarah again, pulling strings through him like a master puppeteer. I walked a slow circle around the room, passing the photo on the mantel, my steps measured and deliberate to counter his rushed panic. A memory came back to me as I walked, right after the divorce papers were signed, when Robert had moved in with Sarah. I had kept the support flowing, paying extra for Emma's dental work and vacations I couldn't join. "Sarah's got big plans for our kids," she had said once during a phone call about custody, her voice light and airy. I had signed another check, building silently in the background while they showed off their success. Now her panic showed the cracks in their perfect facade. "Lawyers," I responded, my tone even but laced with quiet steel. "Let her try. Everything's in my name, Robert. This isn't about being cruel. It's about respect and fairness. I've built everything Emma stands on, and all I get in return is being called a loser." Robert paused. Then his voice shifted, becoming softer and more pleading. "Linda, please, for old time's sake. Emma needs stability. Sarah says you're being unreasonable and stubborn. She's willing to help, but only if you back off and let us handle this." I stopped pacing, my jaw tightening as the afternoon light grew dimmer behind gathering clouds. Sarah's help always comes with control attached. Tell them both I'm done being the silent provider who gets no respect. Emma learns now, or she keeps leaning on others forever. His voice cracked, desperation creeping in like water through a crack. "You don't understand. She's threatening to cut you out completely. We're family, Linda. Fix this before it's too late and we lose her forever." The call ended with him hanging up first, the silence ringing louder than his words ever could. I picked up a notebook from the drawer, the pages crisp and clean as I flipped to a blank one. Ideas and plans surged through my mind, consultations and countermeasures, my pen hovering over the paper, ready to map out the path forward. With the notebook still open on the passenger seat, its pages filled with scribbled notes from the frantic call with Robert, I started my car's engine. The familiar sound cut through the quiet afternoon in Chicago. The spring sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across my dashboard as I pulled out of my driveway. I looked through my phone's contact list at a red light downtown, and my thumb stopped on a lawyer's number. She was an old friend from my cleaning job days when legal troubles had come up with difficult clients years ago. No time for doubt or hesitation. The alliances against me were getting stronger, and I needed protection and backup. The light turned green, and I drove toward her office on the edge of town, Lake Michigan's surface visible in my rearview mirror, reminding me of steady currents flowing beneath the surface. I arrived at the small brick building, parked my car, and stepped inside. The waiting room smelled like fresh coffee from a pot brewing in the corner, mixing with the scent of old books and legal papers. The receptionist smiled and nodded me through, and soon I was shaking hands with Janet, the lawyer. Her grip was firm across a desk covered with files and documents. "Linda, what's the trouble?" she asked, leaning back in her squeaky chair, her eyes sharp and alert behind wire-rimmed glasses. I explained the basics. Taking back the car, stopping the apartment payments, the growing threats from Emma and Sarah. I kept my voice level and controlled, opening the notebook to the important points I had written down. "I need to know what protection I have. The assets are all in my name, but they're talking about getting lawyers involved. And Sarah's business dealings. Are there any weak spots there I should know about?" Janet looked through the papers I had brought, her pen tapping a steady rhythm on the desk. "Smart move, getting advice now. The apartment and car are solid. Your ownership is crystal clear. But if they try to claim emotional distress or manipulation, we'll fight back with records of all your financial support over the years." She paused, flipping through more pages. "As for Sarah, public records show her companies have had some tax problems. Nothing huge, but it could be useful leverage if she tries to escalate this situation. I'll write up some cease and desist letters just in case we need them." We went deeper into the details, her questions probing like a foundation inspection. "Any shared accounts or business partnerships?" I shook my head, but a memory came back as I waited for her to make copies of my documents. The day Sarah first met Emma at a family gathering after the divorce, handing her a business card with a slick, fake smile. "Stick with me, kid. Your mom's good with mops and brooms, but I build empires and create wealth." I had overheard this, swallowing my pride while signing another check for Emma's car insurance. Now Janet's advice turned that old resentment into a real strategy. "File for complete ownership transfer on the apartment. It'll force them to show their hand and reveal their real intentions." Leaving with a folder full of preliminary legal documents, the hallway echoing my solitary footsteps, I felt empowered and strong. The weight of the situation was shifting in my favor. But one meeting wasn't enough. I drove straight to my accountant's office across town, my car's tires humming over familiar potholes and bumps in the road. I parked in the lot shaded by budding oak trees and entered the clean, sterile office space with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Ellen, my accountant, greeted me with a professional nod, her desk covered with spreadsheets and financial documents like a paper ocean. "Linda, it's been a while. Sit down and tell me what's going on with these family troubles." I spread out my financial statements on her desk, pointing to transfers and payments, explaining how I was cutting off support to Emma while Sarah circled like a vulture. "I want you to review everything for any loopholes or problems. Are there any shared assets I might have missed?" She adjusted her glasses and started typing on her keyboard, the keys clicking as she pulled up my digital records. "Your accounts are clean and separate. No joint anything with Emma. But Sarah's business. I've seen some of their filings, and there are some questionable irregularities in their deductions and expenses. If you're thinking about audit red flags, the IRS loves getting tips about that kind of thing." Her tone was matter of fact, but I could hear the underlying suggestion. "Why the sudden interest in taking action?" she asked. "Family respect is long overdue," I replied, writing down her suggestions about freezing additional credit lines and anonymous reporting channels. As she printed out summaries and reports, my mind flashed back to a cold winter years ago when I had wired money for Emma's failed business idea while Sarah advised from a distance, probably taking consulting fees that I had indirectly funded. Ellen's insights turned that old resentment into useful tools. Secure your retirement funds first and foremost. Then, if they decide to sue you, you can countersue for repayment of all those gifts over the years. By the time I left her office, the sun was getting lower in the sky, and my folder was thicker with annotated files and strategies. Driving home along the lake road, I ran through a mental checklist of what to implement tomorrow. My car's cabin was filled with a sense of purpose and determination. But as I turned into my driveway, a new alert pinged on my phone, hinting that the storm was about to get much worse. At my kitchen table that evening, the folder from my meetings lay open under the warm glow of the overhead light. Papers rustled as I sorted them into neat piles, legal documents on the left, financial records on the right. The house was quiet, with afternoon shadows getting longer across the wooden floors, but my focus was laser-sharp and intense. I logged into the online portal first, my fingers moving quickly over the keyboard to start the ownership transfer process on Emma's apartment. I double-checked addresses against the lease documents, making sure everything was perfect. The cursor hovered over the submit button for a brief moment as satisfaction bloomed in my chest. Clicked and it was done. A confirmation email arrived with a cheerful ping, like a starting gun for the next phase. Next came the certified mail, envelopes sealed with notices of asset freezes and ownership changes. I put stamps on each one with deliberate, firm presses. I addressed one to Emma and another to Sarah, care of her business address, the ink flowing steadily from my pen. As my printer started spitting out copies with mechanical precision, a flashback interrupted my concentration. Sarah's arrogant entrance at Robert's company party years ago, raising her champagne glass high in a toast to new beginnings, while Emma hung on her every word. My quiet contributions had been forgotten in the sparkle and glamour. That memory fueled my next step, logging into the IRS tip line anonymously, typing in details Ellen had flagged about Sarah's questionable business deductions and suspicious expenses. I pulled dates from public filings, cross-referencing everything carefully. Submit. The screen's glow reflected my steady, determined gaze. Walking to the window while waiting for email receipts, I noticed the neighborhood settling down for the evening. Children were being called inside for dinner, and lights were flickering on in windows like watchful eyes. Back at my table, I monitored my email inbox carefully. Subtle signs were already emerging. An unread message from the bank confirming holds and freezes. A delivery tracking notification for my certified mail. Tension coiled inside me like a spring, but each action I took built my protective wall higher and stronger. Then, as I sealed the last envelope with a firm press, my phone lit up with an incoming call from Emma. Her name flashing urgently across the screen, the vibration rattling against the wooden table. The computer's notification chimed sharply in the quiet room, cutting through the evening silence like an unwelcome intruder. I leaned forward, watching the cursor blink impatiently on the screen as I clicked open an email from Sarah. The subject line was screaming in all capital letters. "Stop your harassment immediately." Her words poured out in a flood of legal language mixed with fury. Threats of lawsuits for harassment and manipulation, claims that I had overstepped my boundaries on assets that belonged to the family she had inserted herself into. My coffee mug sat nearby, leaving a faint ring stain on the document beneath it, a small imperfection amid the mounting storm of conflict. Before I could even think about writing a reply, my phone rang loudly, Sarah's number flashing on the screen. I answered and put it on speaker, the device vibrating slightly against the table. "Linda, you foolish woman," Sarah's voice boomed through the speaker, that businesswoman polish now cracked and broken by pure rage. "What do you think you're doing? Freezing accounts and meddling in my business. You think I don't know you're behind all this trouble with Emma? You'll regret dragging my company into your petty little grudge." I stood up, pacing to the window where street lights were flickering on in the Chicago evening. Petty, I replied calmly. I've taken back what's mine, Sarah. Years of my sweat and hard work funding your shadow games. Threaten all you want. My lawyer is ready and waiting. She laughed, a harsh sound that grated like nails on a chalkboard. Your lawyer? Please. I have legal teams that eat people like you for breakfast. Back off immediately, or I'll bury you in court costs so deep you'll never see daylight. Emma doesn't deserve this treatment. You're destroying her out of pure jealousy and spite. Jealousy. The word triggered a flash of memory. The first time Sarah had hosted a family barbecue at her huge, expensive home years after my divorce. Emma had been laughing at all her jokes while completely ignoring my phone call about a job opportunity one had arranged for her. I had built all the bridges in our relationship, and Sarah had stolen the credit for the crossings. Destroying her. I'm teaching her something you never could, Sarah. Real responsibility and respect. The call escalated quickly, her threats piling on top of each other like a house of cards. Restraining orders, countersuits, financial ruin, until I cut her off mid-rant with a firm voice. Save it for the judge. Blick. The silence that followed was deafening, but it didn't last long. Heavy, urgent knocks pounded at my front door, vibrating through the house like thunder during a storm. I walked to the entryway and peered through the peephole. Emma stood there, completely disheveled, her hair wild and messy, her eyes blazing with anger and desperation under the porch light. I opened the door just a crack, keeping the security chain latched. Emma, this isn't a good time to talk. She pushed hard against the door, the wood straining against the chain. Let me in, Mom. This has gone way too far. You took my car, my apartment, and now Sarah's saying there might be audits and investigations. You're ruining my entire life. I unlatched the chain and stepped back as she barged into my living room, her breath heavy with frustration and panic. The lamp cast dramatic shadows across her tear-stained face, highlighting the dark bags under her red, swollen eyes. Ruining your life. You've been ruining yourself, Emma. Leaning on me while calling Sarah your real mother figure. It's time to learn how to stand up on your own 2 feet. She pointed an accusing finger at me, her voice rising in jagged, broken peaks. You don't get it, Mom. Sarah's been helping me, offering me a place to stay and loans to get back on my feet. You're just bitter and jealous because Dad chose someone better than you. Just admit it. Bitter and jealous. Another painful echo of that company barbecue where Robert had whispered to me, Sarah's been good for our family, Linda. You should move on and let go. I had moved on by funding Emma's entire life from a distance, working 2 jobs to make sure she had everything she needed. Now, in the heated air between us, I held my ground firmly. Chose someone better. Chose you, Emma. Every paycheck, every sacrifice I made was for you. Sarah's help comes with strings attached. It's about control, not love. Walk away from her influence, or face the consequences completely on your own. Emma paced around my living room like a caged animal, accidentally knocking a picture frame crooked on the side table. The old family photo tilted at an odd angle, showing happier times. Consequences. I'm homeless because of what you did. Fix this right now, or I'll join Sarah's lawsuit against you. We'll take everything you have left. The standoff reached its peak, her shouts bouncing off the walls while my responses stayed calm but firm. Sue me if you want. The truth is on my side, and I have documentation of everything. Finally, she stormed toward the door, slamming it so hard behind her that the entire frame rattled and shook. I watched from my window as she climbed into what must have been Sarah's expensive car, the tires screeching loudly as they sped off into the night. The evening settled around me, but the air still hummed with unfinished business and consequences that were still brewing just beyond my sight. As the red tail lights faded into the darkness, I knew this was far from over. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally standing up for myself. And that felt like a victory worth fighting for. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to Granny's Voice. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments below.